Welcome to my round 11 game of the day from the Tromsø Olympiad. Apologies for the lateness of it. I thought it was only fitting that I should feature China in this final report. Their achievement in winning the Olympiad was really quite extraordinary. They were ranked 7th at the start, and against such teams as, well, notably Russia, to beat them, I think, is just fantastic. So anyway, I'd like to look at the two decisive games from their last round match against Poland. So the first one is Ding Liren against Gajewski. We joined the game after 24 moves. Ding Liren with white. Now, he had a fantastic Olympiad. His record at the end was 5 wins, 5 draws, and his teammates described him as a killer. And he really is. When he sniffs a finish, he's tactically very sharp indeed. Gajewski's a pawn down. He played rook d8 to try to control the pawn on d5. Excuse me a second. Yeah, trying to control the pawn on d5. I mean, maybe he'd overlooked that d6 was tactically possible. It's hard to say. This is an excellent move, because if rook takes, then white wins material with this move, and queen c8 picking up the rook on b7. So Gajewski played instead bishop a6. So he wants to lock this bishop on d3, and if white has to play a move like bishop f1, well, I think then d6 is probably vulnerable. But Ding had worked this all out. After queen c6, now the bishop locks itself in on d3. This is a mistake. It looks great, but Gajewski had underestimated white's tactical possibilities. If he plays rook a7, then this is more tenacious. It should be good for white, but black is hanging on in there. But instead, he played bishop d3, and he'd obviously underestimated rook takes bishop, and now bishop d5. It looks complicated with this pawn on d3. But in fact, the tactics are all in white's favour. Excuse me a moment. As ever, I've got a horse. Black has back rank problems. So, for example, if rook takes pawn, then queen e8. And if queen takes, then takes and rook b8. And what else? If the king goes in the corner, then you take the rook and queen c7, and all the tactics work for white because of the back rank problems. So, for example, here d7, and black doesn't have time to pick up the pawn on d7. The queen can't move off the back rank because of rook b8, and after h6, then white is just in time to pick up this pawn, and it's all over. So king f8 played, white took, and now rook d1, and this is very easy. For example, if queen d7, well, this is just a technical win with the rook behind the pawn. So, well, Gajewski by this time is, he would know that he's completely lost once this pawn goes with the pawn on d7, and of course white still has an attack against the king. So here, and this is a good move. The king can't approach the pawn, the queen can't really approach either, and there are going to be tactics with the rook coming down to e8. So, for example, there's actually a threat to play queen c8 followed by rook e8. So Gaevsky tries to complicate with this move, but there are some good controlling moves now from Ding. And rook e5, that is an absolute killer. So these were the final moves, and now there really is no defence for black. Rook f5 check is coming, and among other things, it's absolutely hopeless. So Gaevsky resigned. So Dingler incredibly sharp tactically. Now let me just go to the final game, which was between Duda, young Polish player, and he's still a teenager, and Yu Yang-ye. Duda got the opening completely wrong. It was a Najdorf, and Yu Yang-ye knew his theory. He understood the position much better than his opponent, and actually won a pawn out of the opening. Black is a clear pawn up. You can see this on the queen side here, and well, even black's pieces look good. This bishop is terrible. This knight is in danger of being trapped. Rook c7 was played, and if black manages to defend this rook, then a move like bishop b4 is coming to trap that knight, for example, and it's all over. So Duda brought the knight back because of the pin, of course. That can't be taken. But now Yu just switched to the d file, and black's pieces are terrible. What I liked about this game was, of course, it looks great for black, but you still have to finish it off, and Yu's technique was superb. I mean, if white waits here, then black can build up at his leisure. So Duda tried to force things. C3 is an excellent move, of course, so that can't be taken because the bishop is on prise. So Duda tried to complicate, but it's very instructive to see how Yu kept a lid on white's counterplay. If that's taken, then rook b8, and it's all over. The king just it's going to be mate, actually. So Duda took on a6. a3, very good move. If rook takes pawn, then bishop a3 is mate. So bishop b5 from Duda. And now this next part I find really instructive. Black has complete control on the d file. You can see that, well, we've just seen that the pawn can't be taken on c3. If white exchanges, then either, well, probably the rook will come in actually, and then the kingside pawns are vulnerable. Pawn takes is also possible, but rook takes I think is probably best. Completely winning. So basically white really can't do much at all. That knight is trapped in the corner. But instead of continuing to somehow plough on the queen side, Yu starts expanding on the other side of the board. h5, excellent move, really good move. In these kind of positions there is no need to rush. So it's good to gain space on the king side. Push this pawn as far as possible. Maybe even, or possibly, push the pawn to g4 to create another weakness. That is quite appealing, and to bring the bishop out, maybe via h6. That's possible, or simply, whoops, my arrow has misfired, or simply just to bring the king up the board. Duda therefore blocks with h4. But now g6. Okay, bishop b4, good move. Just locking everything down on the queen side. And now, okay, just again, don't rush. A very calm move, just bringing the king up the board. But also this makes room for a little maneuver with the knight. So this starts to activate the knight. And, well, okay, white has exchanged a couple of rooks, but it's no big deal. The knight now activates. Maybe one plan here is to play f5. That's one possibility. Another is to bring the knight round via c8, maybe into d6 and then f5. Whoops, my arrow is misfired again. I think you get the picture. But white forced the issue. Now, white is pinning his hopes on one last possibility, bishops of opposite colour. But with these pawns so far advanced, it shouldn't be a problem. But again, Yu's technique is superb. He cuts out all complications. If this knight can enter the game, then maybe there's a chance. But watch how Yu deals with this. First knight c6 and knight d4, forcing an exchange of knights. And again, bishops of opposite colour, sometimes there can be positions where this is drawn, but with the king and bishop so tied up to defending against these passed pawns, in fact it's an easy win. All Yu needs to do is break through with his king. And so the path is clear. Basically he wants to come in via c5 in here, and once he supports this pawn, the d pawn, then it's over. So Duda tries to create counterplay on the king side, but watch, this king is just travelling over. Now the path is going to be via c7 and b6 and so on, or possibly c6. So Duda tries to create a passed pawn on the king side. Obviously that one can't be taken, but now the king comes back and cleans up. Black just has to be a little bit careful. So he pushes the pawn as far as possible and now brings the king over to take on e5. Notice the king is still within the square of this pawn, so the king could come back and defend. h6. This just requires a little bit of calculation. By the way, if b4, then you could take this and the bishop comes back. And now the king gets into d4 before white's king can come over and supports these pawns, supports f3. h6 played, the king comes back. Now this has to be taken. Well, here actually Duda resigned, but this has to be taken. Let's just see this, bishop takes pawn. And the king comes over to take the h-pawn. And then the king will just come in here and support the f-pawn and d-pawn home. So very easy win. So very clean technique from Yu Yang-yi there. He finished with a phenomenal score of 9.5 out of 11. So China won the gold. Hungary was second, with India third, and Azerbaijan and Russia were actually joint second as well, but they missed out on tiebreak. But a fantastic achievement for China. And in the women's event, of course, China got silver. I think they were actually disappointed not to win the gold there with Ho Yifan on board one, but in their crunch encounter with Russia they lost 3-1. So China still would like to win the golds in the women's event. But still, anyway, China are definitely on the up, and it'd be very interesting to see if one of their players can actually challenge for the world title over the next few years.